the news, Army takes responsibility for airstrike that has killed over 30 people in Kaduna State. Nigeria showcases carbon market activation plan at COP28 Climate Summit. And court gives INEC 90 days to clear a register of alleged underage voters and provide officials in charge of registration. Hello, welcome to News Now on TV 360 Nigeria. I am Simisola Adigun. The Nigerian Army has claimed responsibility for the bombing of some community residents during a Maulud Nabi celebration at Tundun Berin in Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. Samuel Aruwan, the Commissioner, Ministry of Internal Security and Home Affairs in Kaduna State, disclosed this in a statement on Monday. On his part, the General Officer commanding 1 Division Nigerian Army, Major V. Okoro, explained that the Nigerian Army was on a routine mission against terrorists, but inadvertently it affected members of the community. More than 30 residents are feared dead in the airstrikes on Sunday night, while others sustained various injuries. Criticisms have trailed the high number of delegates Nigeria sent to the ongoing conference of the parties COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai at the United Arab Emirates at the time when the federal government is urging the citizenry to make more sacrifices. Nigeria has a delegation list of 1,411 people, same as China, with only Brazil and host United Arab Emirates surpassing the number of Nigeria delegates at the summit. Nigerians wonder why they have to tighten their belt when the government is on a spending spree. Correspondent Jide Olaniro tells us more.
Despite the fact that Nigeria's global carbon dioxide emission is 0.319%, Nigerians wonder why a country with an economy in dire straits would go to a climate change with a very large delegates on taxpayers' money. However, the federal government, through one of the presidential aides, has reacted to the uproar, saying it is not the federal government that is footing the bill of the over 1,400 delegates, but 590 as other delegates from civil societies and non-governmental organizations represent different interests from that of the federal government. Picking holes in the number of delegates Nigeria sent to the summit, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, demanded a roll call and costs incurred by the federal government delegates, and also urged the National Assembly to probe the incident. In like manner, the Labour Party and its 2023 presidential candidate, Peter Obi, described the action as wasteful, stating that it was sad that the federal government, we ought to be cutting costs of governance, was being wasteful. The federal government will have to show some level of prudence to actually gain the trust of Nigerians in the way it deploys the country's finances. Jide Olaniro, TV 360 Lagos.
Well, let's discuss this issue further. Ode Friday, the country director at Accountability Lab Nigeria, joins me on the news. Thank you for your time. Now, the delegates list to the COP28 summit has again raised the issue of accountability on the part of the federal government. Now, should Nigerians be worried or not?
Thank you very much. I think thanks for raising this issue. I think Nigeria should be largely worried on this issue. It's very essential to recognize at this moment where we are in Nigeria that effective budgeting and accountability are the very heart and the core of responsible governance. While Nigerians' participation at COP28 is very important, undoubtedly, it is very also equal and crucial to understand that we need to ensure that every penny spent aligns with the interests and the well-being of citizens, not for individual or personal gains, or even government officials who find this as an opportunity to either travel for these international trips or for personal gains, basically. But there's already a concern that the national budget, the implementation of the national budget and its effectiveness, including government accountability, has become the forefront of discussions here and there. We must also learn to enhance transparency at all costs, making information. So part of the conversation that is going out there is the lack of information which has not been put out there by the government. We need to make government information accessible at all times for the public to scrutinize and give feedback at every time. But sadly, when citizens demand for accountability in this case, what we see is the government defending its decision on the number of people that's possibly attending COP28, which is the case at the moment, rather than taking the lead on spending wisely for the limited resources we have. You can note this that it's not just the head of MDAs that are in the travel list, but you have other people who might basically not be even achieving anything at the summit. But these funds allocated for travel, especially in the context of COP28, transparency is key. There should be detailed breakdowns of travel expenses, ensuring that every expenditure is justified and contributes to meaningful participation and the representation of Nigeria in this context. Establishing clear benchmarks. We've seen what one of the president's special advisor on policy talks about developing KPIs. When they get back to Nigeria, are we going to see the clear benchmark for assessing this impact of these trips back at home and how it facilitates national interests, environmental goals, and sustainable development? There should be a public report from. I'm personally calling for a public report from all MDAs, all government officials who have the chance to attend this summit at this point in time. In summary, for me, I think the government should ensure that their participation serves the people genuinely. The citizens are the priority here, with clear accountability mechanism and also prudence, as you mentioned, in expending public funds.
All right, now shortly there is the issue of the lack of trust between the people and the government. How can this trust deficit be tackled?
For me, I think it's about leading people with integrity and responsible leaders who are leading these conversations. If you check what has happened, is because one of the things I mentioned is the lack of information, which we have seen out there, not even in the public domain, for people to demand accountability. So how do you want to build trust in such conversations when the information are not there? Secondly, you have people who are not accountable in the context of serving the people. In the Well, what we have had in the recent times is the difference that cuts between service delivery and the people's and the government officials serving the people rather than serving their own self interest. From the budget implementation processes, we have seen that according to MDAs, there's limited or even less than 10% at most times, or less than 20% at most times, that budgets are being designed to address the concerns of citizens. But you find out that most of the budgets goes for servicing public offices, most of the budgets goes for servicing travel costs, most of the budgets goes for training. And how does this generally affect the people? But in all of this, you have to ensure that while you are serving the people as a democratic nation, it's government for the people, of the people, and by the people. We need to see that the government are actually leading this conversation so the trust can be built accordingly when we have these conversations.
All right, now, Ode Friday, the country director at Accountability Lab Nigeria, many thanks for speaking to us. Moving on. More than 120 countries have signed a COP28 declaration acknowledging their responsibility to keep people safe amid global warming. Hosts of the summit, the United Arab Emirates UAE, and several charities at the UN Climate Summit on Sunday offered $777 million in financing for eradicating neglected tropical diseases that are expected to worsen as temperatures climbs. As Africa grapples with some of the deadliest impacts of flood, extreme weather, and other deadly impacts of a heating planet, a member, Board of Directors, African Finance Corporation, Sanjeev Gupta, who spoke on the sidelines of the COP28 summit to TV360 Nigeria, says Africa must leverage on investment capital from supporting businesses and ecosystems to developing climate-compatible growth for sustainable development.
Given the current scenario with funding, accessibility, funding costs, the general macroeconomic situation on the African continent, any support that comes to help with liquidity on the continent, help with filling the funding gap on the continent is welcome. Over and above, of course, we all know the impact of the climate change that is affecting so many people on the continent on a very direct level. And for a very long time, the entire issue of doing something with it, doing the loss and damage funding, helping local communities has not been prioritized. So to that extent, these recent announcements are welcome. As an African institution, it helps us because we, as you know, are an institution which have successfully mobilized and continue to mobilize Africa's savings to develop Africa's industrial and infrastructure base and climate resiliency and climate adaptation. And of course, generally working in a very challenged macroeconomic environment are all areas that concern us. And so to that extent, again, we welcome these announcements. But I hope that these announcements are seen through and the correct execution and implementation takes place.
To judiciary matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to identify within 90 days its officials involved in the registration of the underaged during the continuous voters registration CVR exercise in polling units across the country. Justice Obiora Egwatu, in a judgment, also directed the culprits to be produced and handed over to the appropriate law enforcement agencies for investigation and possible prosecution. Justice Egwatu equally made a mandatory order compelling INEC to expunge forthwith from its National Voters Register the names of all the underage voters from each of the polling units across the Federation, published on her website, as identified and compiled by the plaintiff in Exhibit A, attached to the affidavit in support of the originating summons. Ofada Rice Day Festival, an indigenous food festival in Nigeria, celebrates Nigerian heritage, particularly the nutritious homegrown food. At this year's event, audiences were treated to variant culinary expressions by chefs and vendors promoting the consumption of locally grown food and healthy meals. Correspondent Okwayemi Osheni was at the event, and she files in this report.
Over the years, this event has earned its place in the Lagos social calendar, recording a massive turnout of participants in various editions and generating significant buzz across social and traditional media. This year's edition, themed Ofada Operation, held at the Morio Konla Park, Lagos, gives room for food enthusiasts to enjoy their local delicacies in an atmosphere of celebration.
Ofada Rice is about celebration, and when you think of celebration Ofada Rice, bring it together, you are Ofada operating. Do you understand? So it's, the name is already just inspires and just gives you a reason to want to celebrate. We don't always want to celebrate our own. So so celebrating Ofada Rice in our own home country, is a lot of mileage for us to know that whatever belongs to us doesn't have to go out there before we celebrate it.
One of the Ofada vendors from Ogun State says there is a lot to gain from Ofada as it was passed down over generations, and also implored young people not to do away with our culture and heritage.
This Ofada we are selling is from our mother. At least Ofada Rice now is 62 years in our midst. Even our senior brother, that is very small then, is selling the shop. He go to people to cater for them. So, in fact, we get everything there. Even though they call next year, we are still coming back. Anything our mother or father, anything they are doing, we have to focus it and know how to do it better, so that thing will not perish.
Vendors at the event describe the festival as a good avenue to showcase their brand and also meet their target market.
It's a big food festival. People will be here to get amazing brands, local brands they can relate with. And of course, after now, what next? They want to be able to get these foods on a regular basis. And I believe that being here, our target market is here.
It made me showcase my style to people, like get more awareness and publicity. Those people that are not on Instagram, on Facebook and all, so it makes people that come around here, they get actually to create awareness about my brand.
I feel that it is an opportunity for us to showcase our work to a large number of people. You understand? We've had people come, show interest in works and go, and that's the beauty of it.
Participants say they love the fact that it gives access to various food as well as the infusion of culture in the event.
The food, actually. I like to sightsee, seeing different food and everything. And I also like the fact that they try to promote our culture in Nigeria. Yeah, it's a good thing to have something like this in Nigeria, actually. And I actually like the theme of this year, the Afrocentric stuff. And you can see everybody trying to put that into play, and which makes sense.
I think it's the way it projects the African culture. I love the way it projects the African culture. So, even any foreign person can come in here now and see the way the prints, the African prints, everything is everywhere, the ambience, everything.
Diverse display of cultural performances added color to the festival, which is a strategic initiative to promote food security, good health, and Nigerian tradition for onward transmission to future generations. Opeyemi Owushemi, TV360 News, Lagos.
We'll take a break here. When News Now returns, Guinea-Bissau dissolves parliament after coup bid. Stay with us for details. Welcome back. Here's a recap of our top stories. The Nigerian Army has claimed responsibility for the bombing of some community residents during a Maulud Navy celebration at Tundu Birin in Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. Samuel Aruwan, the Commissioner, Ministry of Internal Security and Home Affairs in Kaduna, disclosed this in a statement on Monday. On his part, the General Officer commanding 1 Division, Nigerian Army, Major V. Okoro, explained that the Army was on a routine mission against terrorists, but inadvertently it affected members of the community. More than 30 residents are feared dead in the airstrikes on Sunday night, while others sustained varying degrees of injuries. We also told you that the Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to identify within 90 days its officials involved in the registration of the underaged during the continuous voters registration CVR exercise in polling units across the country. Justice Obiora Egwatu, in a judgment, also directed the culprits to be produced and handed over to the appropriate law enforcement agency for an investigation and prosecution. Well, in case you missed any of our news bulletins or for more updates, you can catch us on Limex World TV or log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at TV360 Nigeria, or download our mobile app on Google Play Store and Huawei App Gallery. On Facebook, we're TV360 Online.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those their silly lies.
And wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the go-to app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other People Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
Welcome to Business News. President Bola Tinubu says Nigeria is taking a significant step towards a sustainable and eco-friendly future by introducing a pioneering initiative to deploy a fleet of 100 electric buses. Speaking at a meeting with stakeholders and investors on the Nigeria Carbon Market and Electric Buses Rollout Program in Dubai on the sidelines of the COP28 Climate Summit, the president assures investors their businesses are secure as the government will protect them. Correspondent Chidi Igwe has more.
As the chief marketer of Nigeria as the premium destination for eco-friendly business, President Tinubu woos investors at this gathering to play a key role in the country's transition to green economy.
The government is open for this business. We are reforming as we go along. So, to all of you present here, potential investors and other businesses, I give you the assurance that the government is in for this.
The Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, highlights some of the reforms that Nigeria economy is undergoing in order to attract sustainable investments.
About $3 trillion has been spent on renewable energy transactions, and Africa as a whole has only had about 2%. So even though we're leading the way, this is a very welcome development in terms of formalizing the carbon market and putting a framework that allows investment in this particular sector. And we do need that framework for not just investment and help from the public sector, but where the real money is in the private sector.
Chairman Nigerian Carbon Market Activation Plan, who also double as the Chief Executive of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Zaccheaus Adediji, reiterates Nigeria's readiness to lead the global efforts on climate change through its policies and the rollout of 100 electric buses.
In a remarkable stride towards this commitment, I am thrilled to announce that Mr. President has recently given an approval for the establishment of Carbon Market Intergovernmental Committee. This committee is dedicated to steering the Nigeria Carbon Market Activation Plan, a strategic initiative that underscores our determination to harness Nigeria's vast carbon potential through the implementation of efficient policies and framework. This journey we embark upon goes beyond mere regulatory compliance. It is a resounding affirmation of our dedication to constructing a sustainable, eco-friendly future. As part of this transformative agenda, I'm honored to chair the rollout of a fleet of 100 electric buses, a project that symbolizes our commitment to modernizing transportation system while actively reducing our carbon footprint.
On August 24, 2022, Nigeria launched an energy transition plan to reach a net zero emission energy system by 2060.
The federal government says it is looking to generate 298.4 billion naira in revenue from selling of certain government assets listed as financing item, which is part of the breakdown document in the 2024 appropriation bill. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Solomon Adiola, says the budget of Renewed Hope contains national revenue estimated at 18.32 trillion naira with a deficit of 9.18 trillion naira and is expected to generate a revenue growth of 3.76% in the 2024 fiscal year. In addition, he made it clear the government plans to achieve a net surplus of 2.8 trillion naira from government-owned firms in 2024. This step is intended to reduce the federal government's fiscal burden and fund public debts. We'll take a short break and return with Stock Market Report. Nigeria's equities market decreased by 0.66% on Monday, no thanks to investors who mostly sold shares of BUA Cement, which led the league of laggards that caused the market's southward close. In aggregate, 121 NGX listed equities participated in trading, ending with 33 gainers against 26 losers. Now, BUA Cement came out last, followed by Mac Nichols, both having a combined loss of 94 naira 28 kobo. A total of 358 million volumes of shares were exchanged in 433 deals, corresponding to a market value of over 7 billion naira. And for our select global market, it's all negative trading day as well for the UK's FTSE, US Dow Jones and Japan's Nikkei. All three equities closed at 0.31%, 0.43% and 0.60% respectively. In international news, President of Guinea-Bissau has issued a decree on Monday dissolving the parliament after an attempted coup in the West African nation. President Umaro Sissoko Embalo disclosed in a communique that the upcoming parliamentary elections date will be determined at an appropriate time in accordance with the constitution. Violence had erupted between members of the National Guard and special forces of the Presidential Guard on Thursday night in the capital, Bissau, leaving 2 people dead before the army ordered its forces back to barracks. Embalo, who was in Dubai attending the COP28 climate conference, arrived back in Bissau on Saturday and announced that an attempted coup d'etat had prevented him from returning earlier. An entertainment report is up next on News Now.
Famous singer and serial entrepreneur Mr. Eazi has recalled being a victim of cancel culture after his assertion that Ghana influenced Nigerian music. In January 2017, Mr. Eazi had tweeted that Ghanaian music has a great influence over present-day Nigerian music, which earned backlash with many fans, colleagues, and music buffs threatening to cancel him. Reacting to the backlash he received in a recent episode of the Afrobeat Intelligence podcast hosted by Joe Akpan, Mr. Eazi said he didn't regret his statement despite the threat. He, however, lamented that some people who he thought were his friend in the industry joined others in cancelling him instead of chastising him in private. The Legova crooner also berated those who are still hating him to date, saying his statement wasn't deep and they are hating him for something else. Comedian AY has revealed why he's now scared of cracking certain jokes. The comedian had in October tendered a public apology to singer Davido over his insensitive joke about Davido impregnating many women while he had been trying with his larger one for over 13 years. However, speaking in his latest interview with media personality Toke Makinwa, AY blamed blogger sensationalism for taking his jokes out of context. He added that some hurtful reactions to his jokes get to him as a human, hence he's now cautious about certain jokes. He further said he will even be more cautious about his joke during his forthcoming UK tour. And that's it on the entertainment segment of News Now. Okpayemi Owoshini, TV360 News, Lagos.
And sports, ahead of the second leg of the final round of the 2024 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifier against Cape Verde, scheduled for December 5th, the Nigerian delegation of players, coaches and officials have landed in Praia. The team's arrival in Cape Verde was confirmed on the Super Falcons official X handle on Sunday. While Nigeria defeated Sao Tome and Principe in the first round, Cape Verde claimed an impressive 6-3 aggregate win over Liberia to set up the clash with the Falcons. The return leg is scheduled for the 15,000 capacity Estadio Nacional de Cabo Verde. Well, that's all on News Now. Thank you for watching. See you next time.